Hello, Ram 55 here, and thanks for tuning in. Tonight I'm back in Trainz 2019. I've posted several videos recently of operations on the Tidewater route made by Jointed Rail. And tonight we'll be following Kenny as he delivers coal hoppers to the Tidewater Coal Depot. And this will be the first time that I've been using my rail driver that you can see here. It's a great device. It simulates the railroad cab controls pretty accurately. There's a bunch of buttons on the bottom so you can program those to interact with the sim without having to touch the keyboard. Over on the left you can control the horn, the bell, the sand, and all that stuff. And then there's 4 levers. The one on the far left is for forward and reverse. The one just to the right of that is for the throttle position. The one that looks like a T handle is for the train brake, so that applies the air brakes to all the cars in your train. And the one on the far right is the engine, independent brake that just controls the brakes on your locomotive. Now this is a lot less precise than using the DC controls. The DC controls is like a toy train. You move it forward and your train goes forward. You move it backwards and your train goes backwards. You put it to 0 and your train stops. With this one, it's a lot less precise, and as you'll see, you can have the throttle at idle, but your train's just sailing along as it coasts forward. So it's a lot more of a challenge to drive the train, but we'll see how this goes. And quite frankly, it's got me nervous. So Kenny is engineer for the Tidewater Railroad, and he's assigned to switch the Tidewater South Yard, and he'll be driving the Tidewater Railroad GP38-2, which is an ex-CSX locomotive. That's the one there in the foreground. Doesn't take much power to get this thing rolling. And even when you pull it back to idle throttle like it is right now, it ain't slowing down. So you got to take that into account when you're maneuvering around other cars and through the yard and all that stuff, watching your speed limits. It is a real challenge, and quite frankly, I'm nervous about how well I'll do on this video. The good news is it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. There's not a whole lot of back and forth movement. It's going to be delivering the coal hoppers down to the coal depot down on the Tidewater wharf. It'll be interesting to see how well I keep control of this train tonight, though. And the other thing, with the DC control, you just turn the switch and you go. When you've got all these different brake levers and throttles and reversers to contend with, you got to remember to take the brake off. So there we go. We got it in forward. Brakes are off. And we're going down to the west end of the yard to pick up those coal cars. You can see here with the throttle at idle right now, it's still zipping along at 18 miles an hour. Trying to control that speed a little bit with the independent brakes. So I have 2 drivers assigned to handle the south yard here at Tidewater, and 2 more engineers that will handle the north yard. As I've said before in my previous videos, Norfolk Southern comes into the south yard here, and CSX goes to the north yard. Now, one of my videos, I think I'm going to plan on filming the whole thing from the perspective of the engineer and the conductor. So there won't be any of that third person outside view. It'll all be this view and on the ground. So it should be kind of an interesting way to film. Again, I'm fairly nervous about controlling the train here. I'm going to be very conservative. I'm not going to be going real fast. I'm not sure how well the brakes will be working with one single locomotive. If this was DC control, you know, I'd have no problem with it, but using the brakes on the rail driver, yeah, we'll see. Now, since I made this video, I've done some more alterations on the route. If you looked at my last video that I posted yesterday, it's called the Tidewater Tour, and I'll show you those changes that I've made. Part of it has to do with the track layout, particularly departing Tidewater Yard to the west. I've changed the track configuration there. But I've made some bigger changes down at the Tidewater port area, particularly to the coal depot that we're going to now. Again, very conservative. I don't want to go banging into these coal cars and get a derailment or break the couplers. So just taking it easy, going slow, making sure that I stay under control. So moving ahead slowly to take all the slack out of the couplers. And immediately I can tell this is a heavy load. I'm starting to think, is this one GP38 going to be enough to handle this delivery? Am I going to be able to manage and keep control of the train? We'll find out. So I'm pretty sure a real train throttle has 8 notches from idle all the way up to 8, which is full power. And my rail driver, you can see by the numbers there on the throttle, goes from 0 to 8. But unfortunately the rail driver itself doesn't have the notches, so you've just got to pull that throttle lever in the right direction and watch those numbers on the screen to see what power level you have set. So right now it's set at 5 out of a total of 8. And we're getting these cars going slowly but surely. But in the back of my mind I'm wondering, am I gonna regret not bringing another engine with me to control this train a little bit smoother? My big concern is actually going down the hill because it's a pretty steep grade from the yard level down to the port level. I don't know what the percentage of the slope is, but it's pretty steep, and I'm thinking, am I going to have enough braking power in this engine to stop them and keep them under control? We'll find out. I do love this route though. The scenery is just absolutely beautiful. Really well designed. I've made some modifications to make it a little bit more interesting and set up the way I think the yard and the route and all the other things should be run. But it is really, really a great route, and looking forward to doing more of these. So Kenny is crossing off of the main line there and heading off onto the yard lead. He'll take the cars down as far as he can go to clear that switch so he can back up and head down toward the port. One of the modifications I've done is I've made this yard lead a little bit longer. This is a pretty long train, and it pretty much took up that whole lead track. And I extended that several car lengths further just to give me an extra little bit of slop in case there's a longer cut of cars I need to bring in and out of the port. Now in the original route, these 3 tracks were all considered main lines. They all left the route to the west. And you know, the way I operate this layout, I just don't see that happening. So I turn the far left track right here into a yard lead serving the port area. There's 2 tracks, the way it's set up right here for this video, that are on the far left now, that leave the track. And I had the far left one be dedicated to CSX, and the one in the middle was dedicated to Norfolk Southern. And you can see they just kind of extend down and out of sight there. But what I've done is I've actually terminated the one on the far right that was a CSX track and just made that a yard lead for whoever's servicing the north yard at Tidewater. So there'll be only 1 track coming in and out from both the east and the west, going to the staging tracks. The other 2 tracks that we see here will be yard leads. So now comes the real challenge, backing this thing up and seeing if I can keep control, because I am really worried about this thing being so heavy and not having adequate brakes on the locomotive to keep it under control, keep the speed down. So again, going slow, keep it under control is the name of the game. I've cut some of the boring parts out here, just going backwards down this slope. I'm trying to keep my videos relatively short. I think the average length has been around 20 minutes so far. So I'm thinking anywhere between 15 and 25 minutes would be adequate time. Let me know what you guys think about the video lengths and whether that's too short, too long. You don't want it so short that you don't really get to see the operation and what's going on, but you don't want it so long that you go, oh my God, this is so boring. So let me know. Give me some comments down below. I will definitely read them. I'd also be interested to find out what kind of railroading interests you guys. Do you like switching, delivering cars to the industries, or do you like heading out over the road with a long cut of cars and going from one yard to the next that may be 100 miles apart, or passenger service? Let me know what kind of railroading you like to do. Also, let me know where you live and what's your favorite railroad. What railroads do you have running through your community? I live in Michigan, and it's kind of neat that I have not only the Norfolk Southern and CSX, but I also have a Canadian National, I have Grand Trunk, and then there's some more local type railroads. Right behind where I work is a small yard that is served by Mid-Michigan Railroad. So yeah, what railroads run through your area? Do you guys ever do some train spotting, go out and see what you can see on the tracks? Now you can see here, my throttle's at idle, and it is accelerated from 9 to 17. It's going to go up higher just by coasting down this hill. And I tried to control the speed by using the locomotive brakes, but it wasn't enough. I actually had to use the air brakes for the whole train to get it back under control. But I was able to slow it down. It's doing 10 miles an hour now, so I'm getting a lot more confidence that I'll be able to keep control of this train. I know there were a couple jumps there in the video, but that was just me cutting some of the boring parts out, so leave your comments if that's okay with you guys the way I did that. So now we're getting down toward the bottom. We're at the same level as the rest of the port, almost down to a waterline level. Now if you take that turnout to the right, where those tanks are, that's propane delivery. And then just around the corner to the left of that will be the food processing area. And then on to the warehouses, where some giant ships will be loaded up with some cargo. Now this track to the right is like a runaround track, but I'm going to be using that to store cars on that are not being served by the coal industry right now, primarily for the coal cars. I imagine I'll be putting, 4 to 6 cars of coal for unloading at a time, and then all the other cars I'll just put on this siding here to get them out of the way. This first industry we're coming up on to the right here is a steel finishing industry, and they're going to be bringing steel slabs or coil cars or something in. They're going to do some processing to it. You see a ramp there where they can use forklifts to unload box cars. There's an overhead crane there on rails that will take the heavy slabs of metal and coil cars off for doing whatever they do with that industry. The next industry we're coming up on there is scrap iron. So they're taking all the scrap metal from around the area, shredding it up, putting it on gondolas and taking it to steel mills to be used for the steel making process. And over to the right you see a couple of tracks that are going down to the warehouses. But we're delivering the coal to this coal depot down here where there's a grate. The hopper cars will go over. They'll open up the doors on the bottom of the cars. The coal will go into a great big bin, go by a conveyor belt up into those 2 towers where they'll be distributed into giant piles. And even though it's not here right now, I've modified this so that there's a great big steam shovel, 2 of them actually, that will load a big bulk carrier up with coal from these piles. So like I said, made quite a few changes since I made this video. Now one of the reasons I'm going so slow here is I have this grate that we'll be driving over, and some of these things are interactive and you have to be going at a very slow speed for the cars to unload as you go over them. And even though I thought I programmed this grate to unload the coal, it didn't seem to work. That's why I'm going so slow here. And maybe I just programmed it wrong, I don't know. I have subsequently replace that piece with a proto-Lars piece of track, which will do the same thing. Basically, it unloads the cars you drop off, but you can set it for a delay and have it unload one car at a time and so many minutes in between each car. And it's kind of cool, kind of prototypical. So you can drop the loaded cars off and they will be empty after a little while. So anyways, going slow over this grate. Cars are not unloading, so we'll just bring them back, park them. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier in this video. Ordinarily, when you're using DC control, if you hit the A key, it sets the handbrake on the cars and then you uncouple and drive away. Well, the A key doesn't work when you're in the real train control mode. So I think by applying the train brakes, it sets the handbrake automatically, I think. I can't see any other way or any other button to actually control that. So there I just set the independent brake. What I should do is set the train brake. We'll uncouple those last 4 cars and pull the rest up and put them over on that storage track. Now there's a couple ways I can handle the shuffling of the cars over here as they're unloaded over there at the wharf. I could, when I come back, take the first 4 cars here, or 5, 6 cars, whatever I decide to do, grab those cars, pull forward, and then go back and pick up the empties. Put the empties on the storage track and then go back and spot the loaded cars. The other thing I could do is when I pull in, rather than go directly back and pick up the empties, is go over onto the siding track, pick up this whole cut of cars and back that whole thing up to where the empties are, then pull forward and drop off the cars that are remaining behind and take the first 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever and put those back in the unloading area. That way the empty cars are just added to the back of this cut of cars. Otherwise, I would bring the empty cars back up to the yard for storage up there, and the amount of cars down here at the port area gets smaller and smaller every time they unload another set of cars. Haven't figured that one out yet. Well, I've just proved to myself that you can control this heavy load with just one engine. Feeling a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident in control of the train. So this was a good way to introduce myself to operating the trains with the rail driver. So it worked out pretty well. I just want to make sure that the cut of cars fit on the siding, which it did. Now Kenny's going to take his GP38 and run light back up toward the engine service facility for Tidewater. He's just going to park it on one of the tracks for the southern yard there. We'll put the brakes on, go back inside, grab a cup of coffee, get a little bite to eat, and wait for the next assignment. So we'll watch Kenny head on home. So that'll pretty much wrap it up. We'll watch Kenny for a little bit longer, but thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Leave some comments, like I said. Always interested in getting some feedback about how I can make my videos more interesting and better for you guys. I'd like to hear what your experiences are. Give me a like, subscribe if you'd like, and thanks for watching.